Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm reviewing A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood. This was directed by Mariella Heller and stars Tom Hanks, Matthew Rhys, Chris Cooper and a variety of others. And the film really follows Lloyd. He's a journalist who is tasked with interviewing Fred Rogers. And he's a bit sceptical about him. He doesn't quite think he's what he seems. And he tries to sort of work out who this person really is by the questions that he asks. But it sort of shifts. The interviewer becomes the interviewee. And it's about Fred Rogers trying to work out who Lloyd is and what's happening for Lloyd and what he can do to sort of help in such a subtle and simple way. Lloyd starts to realise that not only is Fred Rogers what he seems, has quite an impact on the people around him due to his TV show and the person he is. And the assistance that he provides in small ways to different people. It really is about how the bond and friendship that begins between Fred and Lloyd really helps Lloyd come to terms with things and deal with issues that he's had since he was a kid and help him become a better person and not follow in the footsteps of his father and neglect his child or his wife and sort of find balance within who he is as a person. When I first heard about this film that it was going to be sort of focused more on journalist Lloyd, played by Matthew Rhys, and it was sort of going to be looking at Fred Rogers, I just didn't know if I liked that idea. I think I wanted more of a biography film. Then watching this film, I realised that it's a perfect way to do it, because if you want to learn more about Fred Rogers, there's a documentary, A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood, to watch, which really captures him as a person. And this sort of is really about Lloyd, but the effect that Fred has on him that helps him to change and come to terms with things. That's what's the most important about this film and the power of it. And it was better than I could have expected it to be. It really is a film that we needed today, I think, in a lot of ways. With a lot of death and destruction and violence in the world falling apart, global warming, a variety of things happening. It's good to have a really nice and solid film with a good message and a lot of heart. That is just a good film. That's exactly what this movie is in spades. Mariella Heller, I'm not sure if I'm saying that name correctly, sorry if I'm not, does a really solid job here. This is her third film as director, and I think she's gotten better and better with each film that she's made. But there's something extraordinary about this. I like the way that it's sort of told from the point of view of Fred, through his prism, of his show, and how they used the show for him to tell the story of Lloyd. I really loved that. I thought that was interesting and inventive and original. And I liked the start of the film, how it sort of starts with him doing an episode and we get to see bits of it. I like that we get to see a model of the towns and they use that to transition into particular scenes. I thought that was very clever. I think it was a little overused at times, but most of it was very well put together and used effectively in this film. It's just a beautiful film. It's well made, solidly acted, and it's just a really good story and well told in a creative and interesting way, which Mariella seems to be able to do in a unique way. She's a unique and fresh voice within these sort of films. And I really like to see what she does next. Like I said, all the acting is brilliant. I think Chris Cooper's really great in the limited role he's in this film. He's an actor I've liked for a number of years, but I haven't seen him for quite a while, and it's good to see him in this sort of role here where he plays Lloyd's father. And it really looks at their relationship, which I really liked as well, and I think he gives a solid performance here. Matthew Rhys is really good as well. He's an actor I didn't really know a lot about. I haven't seen The Americans, so I don't really quite know him that well, but I thought he was solid here playing Lloyd. A lot of people have said the character's a bit of an asshole, but I don't think he is. It's more about he's struggling with things. It's him coming to terms. He's full of rage and anger and frustration and regret and sadness, that it just comes out in a negative way, and he has a negative outlook on life. And he always wants to see the bad in many ways, and that's all he can see. So it makes sense the way he is, a bit prickly, but I don't think he's an asshole at all. I just think he's struggling with the circumstances he finds himself in. But the real standout here, and the person that steals the show, is Tom Hanks. I don't think there's anybody else who could have played Fred Rogers other than Tom Hanks. He's just brilliant in this. I feel he really gets the essence of who Fred is. And his portrayal here is just phenomenal to watch. The voice he used, the way he calmly and softly speaks, where you really have to listen to what he's saying. And that's his ability of drawing us in. And I think that's the key to it. Anytime he's on screen, we just go quiet as an audience member. We get sucked into it, listening really hard to hear what he says. And he's just captivating to watch. Not only because he's playing Fred Rogers, but it's also just seeing Tom Hanks craft this character. this interpretation of what he thinks Fred Rogers was like is just beautiful to watch. And he serves such an important part in this film. I love when we get to see behind the scenes of his show and to see him go about what he used to do on the show. It's really brilliant. This film moves at a slow pace, but it's captivating and interesting all the way through. It's due to the performances and the story they're telling and the way they're telling the story. I like the struggles that these characters go through. Sometimes all you need is someone to listen or to point out things you're not quite seeing for you to be able to change, for you to see that there's another option that you can change. And I think that's what this film's really about, that's the centre of it. But the cinema I was in, everybody was quiet. Yes, they're the senior sort of audience in the screening I went to, but we were just all captivated by this film. There's one particular scene that was just sort of profound in many ways. And look, this is going to be a little bit of a spoiler. There's this scene where it's Fred and Lloyd in this diner and they're having lunch together and they're sharing a meal together. And they get into this conversation. And Fred talks about how on his show, he gives a minute of silence to get people to sort of think about the people that added to who they are and help them get to the point that they are and the person that they are. And he asks Lloyd if he can partake in this just for a minute of silence with him. He's a little hesitant, but he does what he sort of says. As they've been talking, the whole diner's gone really quiet, listening to every word that Fred says. And I think it's because of his ability and the effect that he has on people. And there's a minute of silence. Everybody in the diner is quiet. Lloyd and Fred are quiet. And then what I started to notice is everybody in the audience was silent. You could hear a pin drop. It was so extraordinary. And then there's one moment in this scene where he looks directly into the camera as if he's looking at us as audience members to say, yes, you are involved in this as well. Have the silence with me, like he would with his show. And it's such a powerful, profound moment. It just blew me away to see this sequence. I just had no words for it when I first saw it because I thought it was just perfectly executed and a beautiful surprise within this film that I didn't expect, and I just absolutely loved it. There are things in this film that sort of hit close to home, for me anyway, to do with father and son relationships and how men can feel resentful for their fathers or want to be like them or don't want to be like them at all or feel the effects of what happened, and we swear we'll never be like them, but there's a lot of who they are ingrained in us that we can't help being sort of like who they are. That connected with me in a lot of ways. And the reason why his father appears back in his life really connected to me as well. And it's just powerfully put together. Like I keep saying, this is a profound and beautiful film. There's so much in this. There's so many beautiful ideas, so many great performances, so many mesmerizing sequences and scenes, that there's just a depth to this that I didn't quite expect. And I'm so happy. It's better than I could even imagine it to be. And I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, go to the cinema now and watch it. It's one film I do recommend you see. No matter what your outlook on life is, you'll be affected by this. I found myself after the movie being filled with this joy and this happiness that I felt had been missing for some time. And it was because of this film. It was because of Fred Rogers. It was because of his impact on the world, that he was a man doing what he was meant to be doing, and he did it beautifully and brilliantly. And he just had an effect on people in such an extraordinary way. Just by the simplicity of who he was as a person, not so much what he did or said, but who he was as a person. Final thoughts. At the heart, this film's really about relationships. It's about how we struggle sometimes, and sometimes we just need someone to point out something. We just need someone to pay attention to what's happening to us and ask us the questions that we've have been struggling with, or things we've put aside. And that sometimes just being yourself is enough. Just listening, being completely present. I think Fred Rogers was always present with the audience he was talking to on his show through the camera, to the people who worked with him, to people on the street. He would go to hospitals and he would talk to people on the street, and then they would pay tribute to him. There's a really great sequence on a train where they start singing his particular theme song, and then the whole train starts singing. It's a brilliant scene, but that's the power of who he was. And he's an extraordinary man. And I think it's just really about accepting who you are, the things you like and dislike, and just being the best person you can be, and trying to use the skills you have as a person to better someone else's life, or just their experience in a day-to-day moment. And I think that's what this film does. I'm going to give A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was fantastic. I had a great experience with it. It was just really well done, and it's a really important film that is very relevant and important in this day and age. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe down the bottom. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.